Um, for anyone who's new joining us today, for people who've been following along over the last 7 webinars, we made it to our 8th webinar today. Thank you for being here. Early on, we wanted to find a new way to engage with the community, teach a new lesson, teach a trade, and just kind of keep things fluid. Had a lot of great people come together to discuss tour management. It seemed like a really great idea, so we started putting these webinars together, and they were well received, and things have just been going great. So we're just still rolling with it. Today we are talking about day of show. We've made it. We've gone through 1 through 7. We are going to be discussing what goes into the day of show, the performance, the load in, the load out, runners, first day, what's going to be happening here at day of show. And yeah, running through all the I'm trying to think of the right word to use, all the checklist that goes into the day of show and what's important not to overlook. So I'm going to pass it off to Henry to kind of get things started, and we'll yeah, get things rolling.
Hey, good morning. Okay, so the flow of a show day on tour is a complex series of events that are set in motion by the advanced process well before a tour ever arrives in that city. At every load-in, like clockwork, groups of strangers and familiar faces gather around coffee and donuts to achieve a common goal of putting on a show. Every tour is different, so explaining what the puzzle pieces are and how they fit together is a story we tell every day to the local crew. I estimate that there are approximately 7 million little jobs that need to happen to pull off one concert. So we've asked 2 seasoned pros, Kara McDaniel and Thomas O'Keefe, to join us today to discuss the flow of a show day and how to stay ahead of the workload. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for being here, Thomas and Kara.
Let's jump into it. Tom, let's look at a typical show day on a club theater run. When you wake up, what are some of the first things you do before load in, and what's going through your head?
Well, the absolute first thing I'm going to do, I will have already I've already had many phone calls with the promoter of today's show. Yesterday, I checked in with him. I spoke to him weeks ago. You know, the very first thing is making sure the bus is parked exactly where it needs to be and making sure that the bus is where it's supposed to be. You don't want to park it somewhere, send the driver away, and then find out it's really supposed to be around the block. You know, that sucks to have to wake that guy up. You want to give everybody directions so they can get off the bus and they know where they're supposed to go, maybe where they're going to eat, what are they going to do this morning. You know, if it's a club tour, like you said, you might not load in until noon or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, depending on how big it is. So you've got to make sure that the bus is in the situation, everybody eats, you put out some day sheets. You want to, once you go into the club, into the venue, you want to do a walkthrough, know where everything is. Maybe you've seen some pictures in the advance. Assign the dressing rooms, figure out where you're going to live, figure out where the band's going to live, figure out where the opening band's going to live. You want to meet the promoter. And then that's an important part of it because that sets the tone for the day. You know, if you're good and cooperative and you've done all your stuff, this promoter's dealt with a different band every single day. So if you show up and you've done the advance work and you know what you're doing, and even if they've never met you before, they have a feeling that you know what you're doing. If you didn't advance it correctly, they also know that. So you want to make sure that you start the day on a good footing, and then you would start load in on time when you're supposed to do it.
Anybody else want to add to that, what their start of the day is like? I know I still, even though I've been to a venue 100 times, I still walk every single room, you know, because the artist is different. The needs are different for every tour. And so I need to look at that. And I know that the rooms are down this way, stage is there, but every day is still different. And I still walk it, and we still label it differently all the time, you know, depending on what our needs are.
Might be a good time to bring in that wonderful German venue specs that I showed you guys earlier. So part of the advanced process is reading through the venue specs that are provided to you, and these will vary from a one sheet that just has the audio and lighting on it for small clubs through to 60-page documents with the most detailed information you could ever hope to find. And I have this one that I came across on a recent tour in Germany. This was a club, I think it was around 1,500-1,600 capacity club. And the detail they went into was amazing. So it should give you, those of you who've never been on a tour, never been backstage, a good idea of what you're looking at. And this is definitely, hold on, sorry, 1 second, let me share my screen. This definitely goes above and beyond what most typical writers will give you, and we took a look at this yesterday and kind of felt like it was amazing to see this amount of detail, but it might be slightly overkill. So here's a great diagram. You have your parking map, which shows you where here's your truck parking, your truck load in, trailer load in if you're on a bus with a trailer, bus power. This is Europe, so bus power is essential. And then all the entrance information here. They've given photos of the buses as they should be parked. So this is great information to be passing on to your driver. And then if we follow this down, they've taken pictures of the main gate. So, you know when your driver's rolling up, you can reference this and absolutely make sure that he's in the right place. The parking, alternate angles, exact location of bus power, entrances. This can, if you can screenshot these and send them out to your team, then your team are going to wake up on the bus, get off, and know exactly where they're going, which can be a bit of a problem if you're in a downtown core or if your bus is not parked directly at the venue. And, small things like that just make your day easier. Making sure your team know where they're going, and you yourself know where you're going when you get up off the bus. You haven't had a coffee yet. You were sleeping 10 minutes ago. This is all really useful information. So this is a very typical backstage setup here. You're seeing, the layout of the backstage area, the green rooms, the restrooms, here's the dressing room, and catering areas. So this is kind of what this is a very typical looking backstage for this type of venue. So having all this information before you get to the room is amazing. It's not essential, but it gives you a full walkthrough of the venue before you're even there. So you can kind of orient yourself in advance. So I just wanted to share that with you guys to see.
I love this. This is a great, is a great version of it. I mean, I like seeing pictures rather than just the bullet points of how many rooms and the dimensions. I still like to see a building plot to see where everything sits, but this is great.
I'd love to add that this is above and beyond. It's not always going to be like this. I can show the example since we're on this roll. If, once you get off this, Doug, I can show the parking map that I presented yesterday, just kind of give you a variance of what you could receive on an advance. Sometimes if you don't get pictures, things do change in these venues. So never assume. You always want to do your due diligence first thing in the morning. Like some of these advance packets could be a little bit outdated, and things do change and staff and personnel change. So make sure you're always doing your due diligence. Let me see if I can share this one, which is a little bit different version here.
Our German friends are very much on top of these type of things, and they tend to be very thorough with their venue specs, which is amazing.
Let me pull this up and bear with me here. See if I can bring this up. So this one here, let's see if y'all can see it once it comes in. This is for the Rave Eagles Ballroom. If you're not familiar, this is in Milwaukee. It's a multi-purpose venue. So you've got a bottom tier, which would be kind of like a smaller van and trailer tour, and then you work your way up into bigger cap rooms. There's around, I would say, three main rooms that do performances. So as you can see here in the main parking lot, you can see how they're making this flow work. Like in this example, we had 3 shows going on. So you've got the bottom level loading in, you got the middle loading in, and the top venue here. And you can see where they've broken it out for flow on load in day. So all tours that are being advanced through the PM of the club is organizing this for everyone. So you can see the load in times, when buses are going to arrive, semi-trailers, vans, and so on and so forth. So this is a good example of a load in map. And in this case, I would come in as soon as I arrived and take photos and send them to my team. just to kind of update them on ins, or you can put up signs. I think that's a really good way to kind of get things right off the bus. Just keeping your team updated and communicating with them on their movements right out the vehicle. So this is kind of an example of the Eagles ballroom to kind of give you an idea of what load-in maps can look like in the variants.
It's a great venue. It's definitely haunted, though.
Yes, and also, you know what?
Yeah, for
Do
sure.
not put your bus drivers at the hotel across the street.
No.
Like, make a mental note of, the Ambassador. Do not put your bus drivers at the Ambassador Hotel. You can Google Jeffrey Dahmer.
The venue showers. The venue shower. Nothing's creepier than getting your whole team out and you're the last person to use the venue shower downstairs in the basement. It is a creepy situation.
Yes.
I think that's a good point, though. Showers and toilets are probably going to be the first thing that you get asked for in the morning, because everybody's going to get off the bus and basically want to go and do their business and get their shower in before they start work. So first signs to put up: showers and toilets, and just check that they're actually working, because if they're not, or if there's no hot water first thing in the morning, that's a huge bugbear. So.
Yeah.
And to make sure they have towels there.
And make sure you have towels,
straight away.
Yeah.
Well,
so I think what we're saying
go
is,
ahead.
Oh,
I was going to say, maybe is this a good time to talk about the checklist for a minute? You should have I think all of us have a checklist that we kind of go through. And when you're on a club tour or a theater tour and you're the tour manager of that band, you're usually also running sound. You're also usually, maybe you're a guitar tech, you're running monitors, you're running lights. You're usually in a smaller band situation like that, you're usually doing something else. And as Henry said, you have a zillion things to do every single day. So what you can do to fix that is keep a spreadsheet. I'll show you this one that I use here and there. This one is a morning sheet. I have several of them for different parts of the day, but I mean, every single thing is on here. I'm going to grab my backpack that has my computer in it before I get off the bus. I'm going to put a map on the bus just so when my band guys wake up or whoever's on the bus with me knows where the door is. I'm going to adjust the time on the clock that's in the bus so that the band member doesn't wake up and say, oh shit, we're in Eastern time, we're not in Central anymore, or whatever, because that they don't pay attention to that stuff. I'm going to try to take a shower. Maybe I better do that now because it might be my only chance. I'm going to look at catering. I'm going to do the walk around. I'm going to send in some emails. I'm going to do some buyouts. I'm going to check with the bus drivers. I'm going to do all this stuff. I'm going to meet the promoter. I'm going to do all these things in the first, basically the first hour and a half of being there. And then that's going to make it to where I don't forget anything. Because if I have 30 things I have to do between noon and 2 p.m. or 9 a.m. and 10 a.m., how are you going to remember all of that? Especially if you're the young tour manager who also has to run sound and you also have to go do all the things that a sound man has to do. There's a reason why all the bands we work with carry, 30 or 40 people with us, because we need that many people. But when you're in a van and trailer, everybody's got to do 2 or 3 jobs because you don't have enough, these bands can't afford to have that much crew. So you have so much stuff to do and so many hats to wear. If you have a checklist in your pocket, then you're not going to forget anything, because it's impossible. It's easy to remember 10 things, but it's pretty difficult to remember 100 things. And you're probably really going to do 100 things in a day.
Yeah, not to mention you're probably showing up fatigued. Probably only.
You're going into it. It's the 4th show in a row, and you're tired.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you're going to be getting calls from people, calls from label, calls from management. You might have somebody calling you saying, right, we've got this amazing promo opportunity. We've got to, can we fit this in today? X, Y, and Z. And then all of a sudden, like the 3 hours that you thought that you were going to have to do X, Y, and Z before sound check becomes driving the band across town to go to a radio station, and, doing a couple things of promo before you come back. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, what have I done? What have I not done? So it's really important to, keep a list, check things off, just keep referring to it all day, so that you know that, peace of mind that you've definitely diligently gone through things. My spreadsheet's a little bit less in depth than Tom's, but I can just screen share just to show you my one. Does this work? There we go. Yeah, so I basically list everything from like when I get in that I can check off. Getting dressing room keys, calling the hotel to see if the day rooms are ready, all the way down to at the end, nightly report, and I just put at the end, optimize your time, do things when you have time to do them, because you're busy all day regardless of what's happening. So if you have kind of still water time, definitely use it to do things that you might do later on in the day, just in case things crop up.
I love this. Can you scroll back up to the top? This is a really good representation of the 1,000,001 little things that I was talking about that it takes, because it's not such big projects. It's like tons of little things that could really derail a lot of things in your day if they aren't done. Even look, text X to remind X not to be late. Like that. That is
it's wild to see.
Yeah, nothing is too small, nothing. Because it's the small things that you will actually forget,
Yeah, exactly. Just like if your singer likes a hot drink at a certain time every day and they just say, I want this hot drink at 3 p.m., you've got to write it down, because you're not going to remember for the first week of tour that the singer needs a drink at 3 p.m. For the next 3 months, you might remember, but still it's on your list. So you know that you're going to go and do it, and you've got you've got something to refer to the whole time.
And I actually put, I'll put that sometimes in my calendar or in my phone. You can do notes and you can set alerts. I set alerts for that kind of thing all day,
Definitely.
Yeah.
There was a kind of a couple questions here, Kara, around your checklist here. They would love to see if it's possible, if it's able to be shared as a template. Also,
sure.
They were curious about the gray lines. Does that have any relevance?
No, that's just because I organized it better this morning. Because it wasn't really organized. I just write things down as and when they come into my head, and I kind of jump back and forward. If I see the hospitality person and they've got the buyout for me, I'll take the buyout first thing when I get in, or I might not see that person for a few hours. So I just kind of go back and forward, and I do things as and when I meet the people that that can give me that information. So I guess
the point on that is that even if things do run in order, if we want things to run in order, things aren't going to run in order. Things are going to happen throughout the day at different times. So got to be, don't go like, oh no, that's not next on my list. I can't do that right now. It's like, you have to do it as they come up. That's how you deal with it.
And I've used this from 200 caps to arenas, so I'm always referring to it, always adding to it. It's different for every artist. Obviously, if you're with a band, and I've got nanny instructions there. I had a singer that had a baby. She had a nanny. I had to make sure I briefed the nanny every day, what was happening, where she was going, where the baby needed to be. So I just add in little things for each one. You have to just tailor it for your artist, and there will be artists who are much more needy than others, so your list might get longer and longer and longer every day, but yeah, I can definitely share it as a template. I think I've emailed it to Henry, and definitely it can go up on the website.
I'll put it up on the website. Thanks for sharing. And like she said, this is something that you have to customize to each artist. A lot of these things are, should be checked on every day. But those preferences that you have and those little things are only something that you as a tour manager may know or think about. So you've got to build that checklist, but that's amazing. And then I find that as I build these checklists, once I kind of get the groove going, then I can see like, oh, what if I just take this project and I can do it 2 hours earlier in my day. And all of a sudden that's somehow freed up an hours of my time later in the day. So you can figure out the steps and then arranging them in the best order for you, and the flow of the day is something that I love looking at, because it can change a lot.
you know, I know that Thomas was saying, you know, we check in with a promoter rep the day before. You know, I sometimes use my checklist. I go through things that he can have immediately or she can have immediately for me in the morning. So I'll go through my checklist and go, do you know what, if you could have the buyout, the towels, you know, a kettle, the hospitality up, etc., etc., etc. All of these things need to be done immediately when I'm in, like, first thing I walk through the door, and that's all of those things on my checklist done immediately because I've advanced them properly. So that the checklist obviously helps in the advance as well.
Very
And
impressive.
somebody on here asked if calendar integration was possible, but really a checklist is just your own internal thing. Like you wouldn't necessarily, I mean, there is, you know, Master Tour, like 5-1 showed us yesterday, does have a checklist function to it, but this would just be really kind of your own cheat sheet. Your personal.
I set my stuff up by times, but I don't expect it to be within those times. I mean, I say 10 o'clock, I want to do this and that. They're goals sometimes, and they're good, but it's not a hard. If you start getting into hard, you're going to fail because nothing's going to be hard times like that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how and where you keep these lists. Whatever works for you. You know, if it's on your phone, if it's on your computer, if it's in a notepad.
I have
whatever works.
I have my simplistic version, which is the times of I need to, you know, dressing rooms, signs at this time and this at that time. And then I have my more comprehensive list, which covers everything. So I have a couple different kinds that I use.
Yeah, definitely. And I always have a notepad to write down on, like, you know, just in case things crop up. Like, I mean, I know that sounds, maybe it is old school, but I mean, I could type it in my phone, but I just love when I'm sitting at my desk, I've got my notepad in front of me and I can write things and score them off as they happen. Because, you know, or, you know, write things down and then, oh, I'm going to add that to my checklist later, and then I'll know for tomorrow or the next day. Also, I would say that, you know, on bigger tours, I tend to have like an assistant or a couple of assistants. I still have all of the things that they are meant to be doing on my checklist, on a separate checklist, because I'm a bit of a control freak and I like to check that they've done what they need to do. Not that I need to do that with the majority of them, but it's always good to have in your head, you know, just because at the end of the day, being the tour manager, the buck stops with you. So if your assistant hasn't done something, you know, you're going to take the fall for it.
And you know, I use a small notebook that I just scribble in all day, and I keep those. I have them going back, I don't even know how long. And sometimes when you go back, like I found that I've scribbled down phone numbers and just like really important information. It's just like getting it out of my brain, and I'll look back through, I'll be like, oh, you know, you actually.
You'd be surprised how often you had to look back through paper notes. Like weeks later in the tour, I needed, whether maybe it was for like an accounting question, like what was that for? I know I made a note of that, whatever that was that we did that day 2 weeks ago. And I just, I had it in my paper. Old school and new school are the best ways. Mix both.
I love analog. I think that you cannot go wrong with analog backup.
I love using Google Sheets. Has always had a great integration. I have Google Sheets on my phone and I have it on my laptop. So whatever I'm editing on my laptop, I have it on the go. So if I need to always reference it and check back, I have it right in my pocket. So it's a good kind of alternative to use if you're about that.
Hey, Doug. Can you tell us, Doug, are you there? Is he frozen?
Doug?
Yeah, I'm here.
We'll come back.
There he is.
Oh, hey, buddy.
Hey, sorry, my internet is shitting the bed right now.
All good. Tell us about all the different kind of people we're dealing with outside of our usual artists and crew on a typical photo.
And you know, I feel like we're repeating ourselves by saying this, but it's going to depend massively on the level of touring you're at, and that is true for almost everything that we've covered and will cover in these sessions. If you're in your first club tour, I think it's you know, first and foremost, you're going to have a primary point of contact from either the venue or the promoter, regardless of the situation. Who that primary contact is and the support that they have from other members of staff will vary quite significantly, but there will always be a point of contact who should be there from the moment that your get-in or load-in is set for. So if you're going through small clubs, it may be a house show. So small, medium-sized clubs in the US quite often have a venue manager who they'll you know, like we said already, they'll be wearing multiple hats. They'll be doing 25 shows that month or 20 shows that month, and you know, they are in the nicest possible way, they want to get your show in and out of their venue in and get onto the next one if they're doing their job right. So that person may not give you the same kind of welcome that you will receive on a larger arena show or theater show where you have a promoter rep who's dedicated to your show. So at that point, your promoter rep or your house manager, your venue manager, whoever is production manager, is your point of contact. That will be determined during the advance process. You will check in with them, you know, however long it is in advance, and you give them a call a day out, and morning of show you'll check in with them. They will generally be the person who walks you through the venue, shows you where all the facilities are, green rooms, showers, bathrooms, stage access, merch, and then later on they will be your go-to person for the day. Generally most of or all of your questions will run through them at your starting point. Buyouts, catering questions, merch questions, settlement at a club level, everything will generally go through the same person or two people. And that varies in different territories and different venues. They might break it out into a production manager and a hospitality person. That's a lot more common in Europe. So you'll have somebody dealing with your backstage, you know, your rider, your catering, your buyout, your towels, and then somebody dealing specifically with production. So you need to know who your correct point of contact is for each issue. If you are lucky enough to have a runner or runners, they will generally come. A good runner will come and introduce himself to you, give you their phone number immediately. You will talk to them about your needs for the day, how you know, maybe let's say you are on a mid-size club show or a theater show. You know already in advance that you need some supplies from a music store. Your artist needs to go to the day room. Your drivers need to get to their hotels and then back. And you maybe have one or two other, maybe they're not providing catering. You need them to go and get dinner picked up. So you're going to sit down with the runner and plot this out. And if they're good at the get to your hotel. So, you know,
I think we lost you, Doug.
We lost him.
I just want to add that when it comes to runners, they really make or break the day, don't they?
Yes.
Right?
So
But
true.
really, you know, just like stage hands, they're only as good as you direct them to be. So being as clear as you can with what you need to get through the day is so important. And so articulating and being detailed to the runner really makes or breaks a lot of things. So sorry, Doug, are you back with us?
Wi-Fi is obviously really rubbish at that gig.
Also would like to note, depending on the level of tour, there may be instances where a runner's not in the deal and you have to work through that and navigate that. Typically, your primary advance contact will be doing runs a day prior. Usually I'll send a striked rider or Haas needs or anything a day prior, just to ensure that you weigh those options, that we're going back to, you know, making sure we're running through our deal memos properly, and this will all be discussed before you make it to the day of show. But that is a good example of how that fluctuates, and you could have to go through just one person. You may not have a runner that day. So
also important to know, sometimes your runner is also your hospitality person too. So you have to know, are they setting up your hospitality? Are they going to be busy shopping for your dressing rooms? And then they're your runners. So you got to, if that's the case, then you got to find a way to work in your runs into what they're doing, because half their day is going to be spent buying and setting up your dressing rooms and doing that kind of stuff. So you be aware of that in the advance, but also be aware of that in your day-to-day schedule as to how that fits into what you need.
Well, also another runner situation that you guys can help, but see if you've seen this before. a lot of like Live Nation and some of these slightly bigger venues, they don't want any principals riding in the runner's car. I think a runner drove off of a parking deck with Melissa Etheridge in the van, or somebody. I think it happened a few years ago. And a lot of the venues are very adamant about not having your band principal members in the runner van because of the insurance. Now, of course, if no one knows who your guys are, maybe they don't know, but if somebody that they recognize gets in the van, you may have to be ready to come up with some alternative transportation to run your singer back and forth from the hotel, because they may just say, we're not doing it.
Yeah.
That's a very common practice now.
Yeah. As a jump off from that point, it's also
oh no,
Doug.
I was gonna say also about runners, and you're on a smaller tour where you may not have a runner. You know, that's the kind of thing where you can pre-plan, and maybe on your days off, you know, one of your crew people hops in an Uber and goes to Target. You know, and you kind of have to plan your logistics out,
or know the day before what you need, or the next day, and plan around that day too, and what you need to do, so you don't have to have those runs done that day, or arrange for some. What I do a lot of times is said, that's fine, I don't need a runner, but I'll need somebody on call, whether it be the production manager, who it is, if there's an emergency that they'll need to run and get me what I need, or get my after show food, or somebody will have to do it, even if they don't have somebody that they're paying. There needs to be somebody available in case of an emergency.
Yeah, and there was a question in the Q&A, and I think the way I'm reading it is, would you ever add a runner? And for me, like, if there's not one in the budget, in the show budget, if it's, say, the first day of a tour, I'll just put that in the budget, because you're gonna need somebody to run around. Sometimes two, depending on
the first day of tour, typically two. I just, like, you know your camp, you know what your needs are gonna be. You know, sometimes that runner just wasn't added in because that's how the deal was made. But you know, if you know you're going to need it, like you said, the buck stops with you as a tour manager. So if that's a resource you need for the day, add it in and make sure it's just, you know, you've gotten your worth out of it. I mean, yeah, put it in if you need it. It's you know, a small expense for how much they do.
And what you'll see is that your expenses will be high for that first date or that first week. You know, you'll have those extra couple runners expenses. You will buy more stuff because you're stocking up. But what that does on the back end of the tour, as you get a couple weeks into the tour, you'll find out that actually saves you money in the big picture, because you were able to get it all done. You don't have to be piecemealing Uber runs here and there together, you know, to go to Target or.
Well, and you just need to plan ahead, you know, because if you know your artist, you know what's important. I had an artist years ago who will remain nameless that would only drink this Perrier. Now, if I got him a case of San Pellegrino, he'd be pissed the rest of the day, and he would not drink it. I've had runners go to 10 different stores looking for this stuff, right? So if I see, the first day of the tour, I go buy 10 cases of it and stick it in the bay of the bus. Yeah. Now I don't ever have to worry again about being out of Perrier.
Yeah,
and that's just, it's just common sense.
Yeah, make sure you always have that space. Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've on tour before stocked an entire drawer of a road case with this specific brand of dry shampoo that you could not buy anywhere but online, because I didn't want to run out. And I didn't want to send a runner on some wild goose chase or wait for, it wasn't an Amazon Prime, you know, thing that you could get in like 2 days. So you know,
that's a really good point, MJ. Like, if you've got something that you know is going to be in like 8 out of 10 cities, you're not going to be able to get it. Just get it before you go and put it in a road case and tour around with it, because your runner's time is so important, and you will be relying on that person to get things done, come back quickly. If you're sending them off because you think that, you know, you've been online and maybe this shop stocks it, maybe that shop stocks it, it's going to be like 2 or 3 hours lost of that person's day, that you could be sending them off to do other things that are just as important. So it's all about preparation.
Yeah, or if an emergency comes up. Like, I'm definitely of the camp that runners should be available for emergencies, and anything that we know we need, we should be getting, you know, ahead of time.
I think it's a great idea to kind of pre-shop if you're have things that are only available in the States, but they're not available in Europe, to go ahead and bring those and put those in the case, and vice versa. Because I've had a lot of UK acts come over, do you have this particular thing? And I'm like, I'm sorry, no, and they'll just bring it over. So I think it goes both ways. If we can just kind of pre-shop things that are needed in different countries that are unavailable, I think that's also a really good idea.
That's even
No
sometimes
alcohol, don't ship alcohol.
Too, letting you know ahead of time what you need too, calling or sending an email saying, hey, can you have somebody call ahead and see if this is available at this store, so they know coming in what you need, that you need something specific too.
Yeah.
You're
Somebody pointed out, pre-stock your printer ink.
You're also giving yourself that peace of mind too. Nothing, you don't want, you want to limit your stress in the day. Like going back to that checklist, we have so much we have to deal with during the day. The last thing we want to be doing is stressing out about where our runner is during the day. So always make sure that you have a plan of attack for your runner to kind of have them for you at all times.
And Costco and Sam's Club memberships will definitely help save you money from the jump.
Yeah.
Because your crew guys are going to come to you an hour before sound check, and they're going to say, oh crap, this cord broke, I need someone to go to Guitar Center. They're not going to want to go to Guitar Center at 9 o'clock in the morning. They're going to want to send somebody to Guitar Center at 4 o'clock in the afternoon when sound check's at 5. And you're in a big city and there's a shitload of traffic, and your runner's at Whole Foods on the other side of town. So if anything you can do to get, I mean, that 100 item checklist, you have to do all 100 of those every day. So if you can wake up if you can have 10 of them done the day before, then you've only got 90 things to do. And if you can get a lot of that shit done in the morning, because if there's an emergency and some runner has to go to Guitar Center, it's not going to be at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's going to be at 3:45 in the afternoon. So you got to be ready. That's when the emergency is going to land in your lap.
You're right. I think that's a good perspective that we need to remember, is that this checklist has to be checked off. You know, if you're out for, I've got 36 shows, I need to do this 36 times over, or 80 times over on a world tour, or whatever it is. But understand that you have to automate this process and stay ahead of it. And as a tour manager, you have to always stay 2 steps ahead of everybody. It's your job to anticipate things and to just have it done and solve those problems before anything ever happens. And so it almost becomes a second nature. It's an art form, I think, that you get good at, and you can start anticipating people's needs. You don't even need to set that. You don't even need the artist to tell you that they want that latte at 3 p.m. You just know it, and it's already there when they walk in the building, because you know that they're going to walk in at a certain time and ask you for the same thing. So it just brings so much more value to you to practice that, anticipate and practice anticipating and meeting people's needs, because this is a service-based industry. And so whatever you can do to just really be there for everyone's needs. If you know those crew guys are going to come to you last minute, I mean, you never know, but they're always going to do it. But maybe think ahead and have some cables in the bottom of your road case, or get ahead of them, because you know that they forget those types of things. But Mark, do you want to jump into once we've done our 1,001 things in the middle of the day and we're getting closer to showtime, what kind of stuff are we dealing with prior to show?
So as we get closer, we start getting to our guest list needs. Does your artist have family with you? Do you have a 50 to 100 person guest list? Does the venue have capacity to accommodate those guests? Is there VIP sections? Are they going to be at front of house? There's so many various options of where you can place your guests and how you can herd them around. Guest list is one of our very important jobs that we have to deal with on the show day. And I think Henry has a kind of an example spreadsheet we can take a look at. And then on top of that, we have security meetings, which I think Jim's going to jump into, and a couple various things that are leading up to the doors that me and Henry and Jim are going to talk about. Do you want to talk?
Yeah. So, I was going to talk about just security meetings. I mean, this is something that needs to happen on all levels of shows, club, theater, arena. It doesn't matter. To be a responsible tour manager, you need to have a security meeting, which is essentially just, even at a small level, have a meeting with the promoter rep and head of security for that venue. At the minimum, you should be discussing the types of passes, what can and can't come backstage. Show stop procedures are very important to happen, that need to happen before every show. So if the show needed to stop, everybody understands the protocol in which that happens and where the safe places are. But in that discussion is where you usually cover any special effects that the show may have, any artist interaction. Does the artist crowd surf? Do we pull anybody up on stage? Those types of things, and cover what the barricade security can expect from your crowd. Is there a lot of moshing, crowd surfing? What's the demographic like? These are all very helpful things that you need to relay to the local staff so they know what to expect, and if emergencies arise, they know what to do. And then cover what the artist plans are. What time are they arriving to the venue? We covered if they are going to jump off the stage in the crowd, they need to know that. After the show, is the artist going to go out to the fence line and sign for all the fans, or will they just take off right away? This is very useful information to the head of security and the promoter rep on how they will use their security teams and cover that venue and work with you. If you're on a support tour, then you're not really expected to hold a security meeting or be a part of them, but it's your responsibility to tell the headlining tour manager these points about your show and your artist that they can then bring to the security meeting they're leading. But it's even on a support tour, it's your responsibility to make sure your crew and artists know what to do in case of an emergency. So it's something that's covered, should be at the start of the tour, and then also just daily. It can be in a text. If there's a show stop, if there's an emergency, everybody meets back on the bus. That's all you got to send, or meet in the dressing room, whatever the safe place is. But we're going to go more into detail on security procedures in another session, but that's generally something that needs to happen. I usually do it 1 hour before doors. That way you have time with the promoter, with the head of security, and then they have time before doors open to have a meeting with their staff and pass out all the information you give them.
Yeah. Also to put into account that this will fluctuate based on your, run of show. That if, say, you have a VIP meet and greet and stuff, that will affect your timing. I think an hour before doors is the standard norm. But just to put into account and work with your schedule, you have that in place. Jim, do you want to add anything?
No, I think that mostly covers it. I mean, I think it's just knowing where everybody is in the room, knowing where for emergencies, having that covered, letting them know how your show runs. I even say if I don't do a normal encore, if it's an encore, I kind of let them know what that looks like so they can kind of predict the end of show or know what song is happening at the end so they can be ready for that. I think it's just anything that you think is relevant to them. And then again, I always finish with asking them questions or asking them if they have any questions to make sure that anything that they have questions about is answered and we're all on the same page.
Yeah. I worked with an artist that had super heavy rail fans that love to do everything in their power to break the rail in half. So that was an important discussion to have adequate security to be prepared for that, so it's just anything that pertains to your show for the safety of your fans, your crew, and just everything going in and out of that venue.
What else should be in the security meeting too, and that's also with the promoter, is the dreaded outdoor mid-summertime afternoon thunderstorm dilemma, which will be what makes me quit this job, because it's the part of this job I absolutely hate the most. Watching a line of thunderstorms coming towards the venue and deciding, what are we going to do? Are we cutting the opening band? Are we going to have the band play? How are we going to do it? And during that time, it has to be decided who's going to be the person. Usually it's going to be me, the promoter, and maybe the head of security, but we are going to be watching that weather radar all day long and making a decision. You might have your band on stage, you might have to cut the opening band. I've done that before. You might have to cut your band short. You know, you have to be ready. These outdoor shows are getting more and more, you know, with the way weather is nowadays and thunderstorms and all that kind of stuff. That stuff is insanely stressful, and you have to be insanely on top of it because you are in charge of those 4 or 5 people on stage and those 15,000 people that are standing in front of the stage. You know, it takes a lot longer to get 15,000 people out of a venue than it does to get 4 dudes off a stage. So you have to think, you know, like that. So that, the whole outdoor show, that could almost be a whole nother episode maybe.
Yeah, and I think it's important to work with, one thing I was trying to say when I got cut off there was, you know, in light of recent events, there's no show that's too small to be considering about safety and security.
Right.
You know, what happened at the Bataclan shocked everybody. And that's the size of a show where the 95% sure the tour didn't have security. There was no, that would have been on the tour manager to arrange the security for that size of show. So it's, and on a bigger level, what happened at Manchester Arena, what happened in Vegas, these are terrible things that have happened in our industry. And it's something, unfortunately, we all have to be aware of, whether it's a 200 cap club or a stadium. So it's never too small of a show to be concerned about security. And until you have a security person, it falls on you in conjunction with the venue and their security team to be managing that.
And it may be something that you have to say to your band on a smaller level. Like if you're in a club, and you may have to say to them after sound check, if we need to get you out, that's the door. You know, and because you don't want people running around. If you're on a larger tour and you have security, then everybody just knows to follow the security. But if it's all on you, you're probably not, you may not be with the band when they need to go.
Exactly. Especially if you're doing front of house, or you know, you're sorting merch or whatever, you might not be there to direct them then, so they need to know as much as anyone, which is why it's good to
on stage, like a stage manager is somebody that is designated to do that if I'm not there.
I mean, it's good to have a WhatsApp group just to put these things on and, you know, do like a little security plan and be like, here's your exit. If you're at front of house, here's your exit. If you're on stage, here's your exit. Everyone meets at the bus or on the corner or whatever. And, you know, just so everybody's clear.
It's also important to stress that you're particularly with, I think it's important that your promoter's rep or your production manager are kept across aspects of your production that might be problematic, especially in light of what happened in Toronto a couple of years ago with the Radiohead crew, where unfortunately tech was killed by some falling production. And I've noticed, I work up here a lot in Canada, and you know, Live Nation are very, very aware of production issues in light of that, as everyone should be, but they are extra vigilant on building of structures. So I don't want to get into any area of contention, but just be aware that your promoter or your local production will be watching what you're building and what your team are building and doing, and if they're not happy with something, they might call you up, or your production manager, if you have one, and ask you to remedy a situation, query you on it. And it's important to work with them on that, because their goal is the safety of your whole team, the audience, and everyone that's going to be in the venue. So don't see it as them trying to stem your production. They're trying to ensure a safe show for everyone involved. So I think it's important to work with them on that and be aware that it might come up from time to time. So just to keep on track here, I wanted to quickly touch on what it looks like. So we've talked about what happens before doors. What happens as a tour manager when you're preparing your artist to go on stage. So generally, you'll have 1 or 2, maybe 3 opening acts, and then there will be a period of changeover on the stage, typically on a headline show, 30 minutes, from 20 to 30 minutes from the previous artist, where they will strike all the gear, production set change, line check. And your role during that time can change depending on the needs of the artist, depending on how many crew you have, but typically you will be responsible for everything that pertains to the artist during that time. That may be going and checking in with your monitor engineer getting the packs and bringing them to the dressing room, or maybe your monitor engineer likes to do that himself. So it's important to check in with them and have a process that you follow every show day that get into a rhythm. And you can have the same checklist that Cara and Tom showed you guys earlier for pre-show, a changeover checklist, you know, packs, stage drinks, stage towels, set lists. If these things are falling on you as a tour manager, you want to be responsible for getting them where they need to be, taking them out to your backline techs or your stage manager, and giving your artist a time check. So 20 minutes to stage, 10 minutes to stage, 5 minutes to stage, walking to stage. And you want to keep your team informed on radio, you know, walking artists to the stage. If you have security, then they're going to be involved in that process with you as well. So, and then you get to the most crazy and calm time of the day when you're walking your artist to the stage, 5 minutes to go, 2 minutes to go. You will, whatever your process is at that point of initiating the show, your artist is going to be ready to go. They're going to be, it's almost like being with an athlete as they prepare to go and do a big race or play a big game. They're energetic. They're all ready to go. They're in their headspace. So they're going to ask, they're going to say weird things. They're going to be like, oh my God, hold my phone, and throw all their possessions at you 2 minutes before they're going to go on stage. Or they're going to say, oh shit, my inhaler, it's in my jacket. Can you go and get it? You just need to be, you need to be the calm head at that point. You need to be thinking about the run of the show and everything that needs to happen whilst your artist is hyped up and not potentially thinking all that clearly at that stage. So that's my most fun part of the day. I'm sure you guys are the same way. I love that pre-show energy. You can't.
My favorite part of the day. I call it the changeover. I call the half hour of power, man. I mean, just seeing everybody from the crew to the band, everybody gets geared up and you know is getting in, like preparing for battle for their role on that stage or whatever it is. And then usually I'll go, once I see changeover starting, I'll go and clear the artist dressing room out if there's a lot of guests. I like to do that for the artists and just make sure, what I call lockdown time. Anybody that's non-essential to the artist at that time needs to go, just to protect them so they have that time to get in that headspace that they need as an artist. You know, but every artist is different. Some just don't care and want all their friends around, or some need, you know, time to meditate or have a huddle with the other band members. There's always some pre-show ritual that an artist likes to do, and as a tour manager, it's good to figure that out and protect that moment for them of when they walk to the stage. It's one of the most exhilarating things in this industry that you can do is walk an artist to the stage and say go. But I miss it dearly.
And it's nice to work on some little cues with your artist. If they want to clear the dressing room, but they don't want to be seen to be clearing the dressing room, then it's your job to go in there and be, you know, they can send you a text or they can do this or you just know that 15 minutes, 20 minutes out that you're going to be clearing the dressing room. And it's your job to go in there and be the bad guy and clear everyone out. So the artist goes, oh, no. But, you know, really they want the dressing room clear so they can focus on the show.
These are the questions I usually ask early in the tour. I'm like, do you want a countdown? Yeah. What do you want your countdown to be? Like I've worked with artists that wanted countdowns starting 90 minutes prior. Like they wanted like 90, 60, 30, and then every 10 minutes, you know, or I've worked with people that don't want anything till 15 minutes out. And then again, like also getting on the same page with, hey, when do you want the dressing room cleared? What's the signal? What's the signal if you don't want it cleared? Otherwise I'll do it. You know, it's in working these things out in advance in rehearsals or the first day is really important. And it's something that makes you closer with your artists.
The other thing is, like, I mean, I'm lucky enough to have worked with like a lot of female artists, and they seem to have hair and makeup younger and younger and younger. So they're doing club tours. They might only have one tech. You might be production manager, tour manager, merch, security, but they'll definitely have hair and makeup with them. And hair and makeup people are artists, and they're incredibly good at what they do, and I have the utmost respect for them, but they don't look at the time. and they might be having a whale of a time in the dressing room, and you have to keep on top of that as well, especially, and obviously I'm sure we'll talk about that in a different webinar, but with promo and stuff, it's the same thing. You're on someone else's clock, so that's a key thing, especially, I mean, if you're working with a male artist, it's the same thing. But yeah, talking from experience with the female artists I've worked for, they've definitely had a team around them, stylists, hair, makeup, that they're having a brilliant time. It's a fun time, but you need to keep on top of them and make sure that they are also people that clear the dressing room, 15 minutes before or 10 minutes before.
So that's important, and also almost every tour now has a photographer or a social media person, regardless of the size. I've been on tours where it's been a TM front house and a photographer. They're becoming so crucial to tours, and they, most touring photographers now are very aware of the sensitivities that go along with it, but you might have to kick them out of the way where they're standing in your entrance to the stage, or they're right in the way of your big lighting cue that's going to go down on just as the show goes up. So it's important to just keep an eye on them, because they tend to be quite young and sometimes not as aware of production issues as you would be. But so once the show goes up, your band are on stage, everything's going well. Personally, I think we talked about this yesterday, most of us would watch a little bit of the show to make sure everything's up and running, and then try and use that time to catch up on some emails, some paperwork, whatever it is. And then from that point, Cara, if you want to bring us on to what happens after the show.
Yeah, well, I would just say, it obviously depends on your artist, what they want to do after the show. When the lights come down, some of them are exhilarated, some of them just literally want to go straight into the bus and they don't want to talk to anybody. So, going back to what we said about security, it's great to have, if you know that your artist is going to want to go straight out to the bus, out of that door, you need to have the security on hand, you need to have everybody prepped and primed. And, going back to the security thing as well, if your artist has people that will run round the bus, you need to have kind of strategy for that. Some artists say they're not going to sign for people, and then they end up signing for 2.5 hours in a freezing cold Berlin parking lot. But yeah, so you have to be able to kind of read the situation, know your artist, and figure out what they're doing. And get them safely on the bus or up to the dressing room, whatever they want to do. If they might have loads and loads of guests that they want backstage. So again, that's another issue. Where do you meet the guests? Are the security prepped to get the guests backstage? Or have all the guests got exactly what they need in terms of passes and credentials? Have you thought about hospitality in the dressing room? Are there going to be people that are more important that need to meet the artist by themselves first, and then the rest of the people come in afterwards? Is there a separate after show that you are organising? Do you need the runner to be on standby to take your artist to a separate place where this after show is going to be? So it's all that kind of stuff in one vein, and then in the other vein, if you're also the production manager, you need to be aware of where the loadout is, where your local crew are. If somebody's parked behind your trailer and you can't get your trailer door open, things like that. So there's a whole wealth of things. Again, it will be dependent on what your artist wants to do after the show. I think one of the guys touched on just training your band or training your artist to understand that if you have a couple of jobs during the show, you might not have had the time to settle the show. So you might have to go and do settlement straight after, and they might not be able to call you up and say, I need that Diet Coke in the dressing room now, because you might be having to do settlement and collect cash, etc. I think, just like checking that there's, the bus is fully stocked and there's ice, etc. during the show, so you don't have to think about it afterwards, is an important thing. So if your artist is going straight up onto the bus, you need to make sure that that's all done prior. And yeah, I think, have I missed anything, guys? Probably. I haven't looked at my checklist.
Tom, I'd love to hear. Tom, I'd love to hear what your thought process goes through once Weezer comes off stage. Once any artist comes off stage, we immediately start a whole nother checklist of things that have to happen in a very short amount of time, because now you're working against sort of your loadout clock and the distance it's going to take you to the next show. So, Tom, walk me through your mindset after a show ends.
Well, I mean, I'm going to do my best to settle I usually 99% of the time, I theoretically have nothing to do while they're on stage. So what I'll always do is I'll always get them up there. I'll watch the first song. I'll go out to front of house and watch a song just to kind of eyeball everything and make sure everything's good. Then I'll run back to my production office. If I can settle, then I will do it. Sometimes you can't settle during the show because the box office is still waiting on a report, and the promoter can't really settle with me until he knows it has the final box office report. So sometimes that's a holdup. But the thing is, those guys, and see, Kara touched on this. If you're in a baby band situation with a new band, you're new, but they're also new. So what you teach them is what's going to stick with them. If you do something right, they're going to expect it to be right the rest of their life because they don't know any better. Most of these baby bands have never been on tour before. They haven't done this. So if you teach them the right habits, the first time a baby band gets on a bus, what happens? One of them gets left at a truck stop somewhere because they don't know to, do the signal with the driver or whatever. But
that doesn't just happen to baby bands either. It happens
to
really experience.
But my point is, you have an opportunity to teach them the right way to do this. So if I tell my guys, if I can't settle till after the show, and one of them calls me or something, and I say I'm in the middle of settlement, they go, okay, cool, do what you got to do. Let me know when you're done, because it's important. That's an extremely important part of the day. And as Henry pointed out, you just woke up at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning. You didn't get any sleep last night, and now it's 12:30 at night, and some guy is sitting across the table from you, may perhaps trying to shit you on something. It's happened before, and you've got to be sharp and you've got to be on it. You have to go into that settlement and know and be ready to do it. And so if you teach your band to leave you alone when you're settling, everything will be fine. I taught one of the bands I worked with for many years. I always did accounting on Saturdays, because Saturday morning I would wake up, I would commandeer the back lounge of the bus or my production office. I would not take any calls. No one was calling me on Saturday. And I would lock myself out for 3 or 4 hours. And I would do all the accounting, get all the paperwork together, get the FedEx ready to send to the business manager. And I train those guys, leave me alone for a few hours, because I'm counting your money. I'm trying to make sure this is correct. And they learned to do that. So they left me alone, and I could have 3 or 4 hours on every Saturday to get completely caught up on my accounting, and everything is right, because the money's got to be right. None of us are going to have a job if the money's not right at the end. And you don't want to lose the money or lose receipts or whatever. And so that's important, but you take that opportunity to teach them at the beginning the right way to do this and what your responsibilities are, and then they will forever be cool about it. 25 years later, if I say to my guys, hey, I got to go settle, they know what that means. They're not going to see me for a half hour or 45 minutes. It's okay.
That's a really good point. I think that's something that we end up doing a lot of the times with younger and mid-level acts is teaching them how to tour and how to be a responsible little rock star. Like here's your part. I have to also do my part. We work together in this. So that's very true. Teach by example.
Yeah.
Great. I think one thing that's really, a lot of this feeds into is that and this is something that applies for a lot of management jobs, but time management is crucial. You might have 3 things come up that are all urgent, and you have to kind of determine, you might be dealing with a situation that is crucial with the artist, and your backline tech comes in and brings you an issue that is an emergency in his world, but it does not necessarily trump the issue you're dealing with. So you have to take everything that's dropped onto your desk and deal with it on a priority basis. And that sounds like a fairly simple thing to say, but you know, when shit is hitting the fan, it's important that you deal with the issues in a priority level and try and lean on your crew. If there's something that they can do, or somebody else from the venue can do, or the runner can pick up the slack just to get it done. It's okay, you know, if you have a good team, you know, you rely on them to be able to push things through when you're really up against it and doors are screaming up at you and the music store closes in 10 minutes. So we're running a little bit behind here, so I'm going to pass over to MJ, who wanted to talk about promo. This is something that is super important on show day.
This is kind of the everything in between part of the day, before doors usually, especially if you're working with an up and coming band. Most bands, but especially those bands, will have promo while you're out on the road. Sometimes you might be completely on a promo tour where you're mostly doing promo and then maybe playing a few shows. Sometimes your day of show will be a full promo day where you do a TV show that will take all day. Sometimes you might have promo in the morning of a day of show where you have to go do a full band setup somewhere. And then you have a show in the evening. So it's effectively 2 show days you're planning. You know, if you have a production manager, they can help with that. If it's just you have to decide, hey, are we going to hire a backline? You know, are we going to get the label to pay for that? Because there's no way we can do 2 setups at once. So you're effectively doing 2 advances at once. Sometimes your artist will just have some interviews on a show day, and you need to sort of work that into your checklist. You will have probably coordinated, I mean, gosh, like probably publicist, label, management, you know, like sometimes I've worked with management where they're just sending me a full promo schedule for the week. You know, there's interviews every day. Sometimes there's a person that comes and you have to find a spot to do this interview with, and you usually have to step away from your checklist and what you're doing to sort of monitor that and make sure it doesn't go over and cut them off. And sometimes you're just making sure they get on the phone. So there's a lot of juggling that, but it's very, very important. It can often, in your day as a tour manager, feel like a nuisance, but it's actually very important for the artist and interfacing with the label. And, you know, you have a publicist whose entire job is doing that. So it is important to take a breath and remember that it's very important. Just as an example, I'll just show you, this is just a couple of day sheets of what that kind of day might look like. This was for a band that was doing a promo tour and then like some smaller theaters and some promo on days off. The band did use Master Tour, but the touring party also liked to have a PDF day sheet sent to them the night before just so they could like look at a one sheet. So this was for, actually, no, let me look at this one. This was for, this is for a day of show where they did promo on they did the promo on the morning of a show. So this is what this might look like. It was just a small TV pre-recorded thing in Chicago. So they did a 30-minute set. It was a full lobby call, like a full day. And then straight to Lincoln Hall to do a show. And on this particular one, they the label did pay for rental backline because there was just no way to move it. And then, you know, just letting them know that the bus is leaving, everybody's gonna fly the next day. And then this was for, this is for the same artist, which I'll just touch on very quickly. And this was, they were doing just a taping at Late Night with Seth Meyers. And this is a lot going on for one song. So like, just little things. We chilly in the studio. There again, we have band and glam lobby call. There was glam, there was full hair for one song. A lot going on. So this is a full day, that you need to, and something that's really important to remember, you're going to advance it like any other show. There's lots of people to advance with at the TV show. And on those days, it's important to know that it's actually not your day. It's not your day. You don't really have much of a say other than coordinating all this information and getting it to your touring party. So I think that's something really important to remember about promo, especially if it's a full promo day. So, just kind of in conclusion about promo, it's a very important part of the day. And, or if you're doing promo that's a full day, it can be as busy, if not busier than.
Oh, man, it can just wipe out your whole day.
Yeah.
You may have to spend all day doing that. But, like we were saying to, you have to look after your artists, but then also using the team around you. Because typically a lot of the times there's a label rep that may be in that city with you, or one that covers a region of the country, and that will kind of follow along the tour. And if you have a label rep there with you, then you can ask them, and they're there to make sure that promo goes smooth as well. So using them to try to get, maybe they can watch the artist during the interview, so you can run back to the office and get a few things done. But yeah, you're right. I think we should do another panel someday on just promo, because a lot of coming acts, that's the first time they experience television is, going to Seth Meyers or going to Tonight Show. But
promo is fun though. As crazy as it is, I actually find it really fun.
Me too.
It's nuts, it's bonkers, but it's really fun.
And you'll hear a lot of people cursing it, but it's important to realize that it is fundamentally very important to the continued success or improved success of your artist, and that could be tied to your career prospects. So facilitating promo is linked to your career progression. So don't shit talk promo. It's there for a reason. It might be a pain in the ass to make it happen on the day, but it has tangible benefits to the artist's career, which has tangible benefits to your career.
Yep.
And if you do shit talk the promo person, or you're difficult working with the promo person, they will absolutely go tell the manager, and you will absolutely be replaced. No, you can't. That's just we're all on the same side. We're not on a different team.
Well, I think it goes back to, what we were saying about relationships, is that the publicist might be working with 90 other artists. One of them needs a tour manager. Well, I know a really good tour manager that helps me out all the time. There's your next gig. So these people are constantly, and a lot of the time they're good friends with the band, because, they might have done a month or two's promo before they've gone out on the road. So they might have been with this publicist for a month or two. They might be their best mate now. And they go back to the label and they say, this person is really, really good TM. Can we put them on another one of our artists? Because, they help us out all the time. And there you go, you've got another gig out of it. So it's important always.
MJ, I like that portion under your press schedule. Did we have a run a show that I saw some reoccurring questions on just showing what a run a show looks like for the day? Do you have
I've got one. Here.
Just so they have an idea of what the tour's looking at for the day. Here we go.
This is one that Adrian shared with us. This is a typical day sheet that you would find on posted on the walls, or that you would be posting on the walls in the morning. So, I mean, everything that we're talking about is sort of the internal flow of the tour manager, while all of that is happening up against this schedule on stage. So you have to be aware of different timelines that are happening around you. And basically, everything we're doing on a show day is dictated by doors. By what time doors are. If doors are 6, 7, 8, whatever it is, that dictates everything in my day that happens before or after it. So making sure, and we mentioned this when we spoke about building the tour and advancing in previous episodes, that time dictates everything you're going to do, from the time you're going to get there to the time you're going to leave. I mean, on a typical day sheet, you're going to put your schedule down, and I like to end it with whatever time you're going to leave on to the next city. I don't like to put too much information on a sheet that I'm going to spread all over the venue. I like to keep that just to the basics. You don't necessarily want to post this one maybe out in public areas, because then you're kind of giving them hotel information or where you're going, what time you're leaving. You don't want to share that with maybe with fans because it's a security breach. But
yeah.
And
Yeah,
one great thing about Master Tour, it lets you output different types of day sheets with different levels of information on it. So you can do one day sheet for dressing rooms and one for public areas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, look, did we forget anything? Oh, you know what, Tom? Give me a quick tip for if you're a support act. If you're a support tour going into arenas, there's a different kind of protocol that you may want to follow there if you're supporting a tour.
Right. Yeah, well, if you're the opening band on a larger tour, typically if you're a baby band tour manager and you're working your way up, I'm sure all of us, our first arena tour or our first shed tour was opening for someone else. Normally you're going to be with a band that's opening, and you're living under their tent at that point. You have to live by their rules, and every single band's going to be different. Some bands are not going to want your guests backstage. Some bands are not going to want your guests watching them sound check at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Some bands the rules are going to be completely different for everyone. So you really, and also, the tour manager of that headlining band is very, very busy. So the last thing on earth he wants to do is have any problems with your band. You guys should be essentially invisible. You should show up, no problems at all. You do what you're supposed to do. You play the show, you get out. And then everybody's cool with that. Nobody wants to have another problem. We already have enough problems to deal with in a normal day. So I think and I think you could be on one opening act tour and then go to another one and it could be completely different.
Yeah.
So usually you'll get a speech the first day. And that speech can be tough, or it can be, I've been the kid receiving the speech, many years ago, and sometimes it can be pretty harsh. But you just have to remember, and that speaks to what we spoke about this yesterday. There was a segment we were going to call "Don't Be a Dick." This is an insanely small world that we live in. That guy right over there, Mr. 5'1", was out on tour with me in 1998.
I was 7 years old.
He was only 7 or 8 years old. He had just got his learner's permit. But you see what I mean? There's a small group of people. I ride around the country every summer, maybe not this summer, but every other summer, we ride around the country and we settle with the same 50 people. I used the example yesterday. The guy who paid me the last time Weezer played in Kansas City is the same guy who paid my punk rock band when I was in a punk rock band and had hair this long to play the Outhouse in Lawrence, Kansas in 1991. It was the same guy. So we're just riding around the country and the world seeing all these same people that many of them we've become friends with, and we're part of a giant family of people that do this. But if you go into this being an asshole, you go into this making ridiculous, childish demands that are unimportant, they're going to remember that too.
Yeah.
There are promoter reps all over the country that are amazingly good that all of us on this screen look forward to working with. And they don't want to, if you are a jackass, they're going to remember that next year. And this is a small, small, small world we live in. And, like Kara said, you have absolutely no idea where your next job's going to come from. So it could be from the manager, it could be from the publicity person, it could be from the opening band. When I was working with Ryan Adams in 1998, when around the time that David was out with us, a little baby band called Train opened for us, and I ended up working for them for 13 years. So you just never know. You should be nice to the opening band. They may be the band you end up working with forever, Yeah. And it's a very, very small community of people that are actually really, really doing this for a living. Be a dick when you have to be. Be a dick when the guy's trying to screw you over. But don't do it just for the sport of it, because nobody wants that.
Wise words. Any last thoughts before we move on to questions? No? Okay. Let's do some Q&A. I saw some good questions in here.
We're gonna bring someone up.
Well, if anybody wants to, let's see. Let's scroll back. Does anybody see any questions that we want to jump on first?
I just wanted to quickly say, just while you guys are looking through the questions, that we sort of threw this back and forth yesterday about reporting back how the show went to management, label, agents. People are not present but need to know how the show went. And they will generally be receiving the settlements by default or through your accounting system, however you report the shows. But most good management, most good agents want to know how the show went, how it felt, if there was any issues. And we had a bit of a minor disagreement about this yesterday. I like to send an email out to the agents, the label and management, just with a quick couple of sentences, a quick couple of paragraphs, about how the show was, if there was any issues with the venue. And for the most part, they're pretty mundane because the band that I do this for are incredibly consistent and professional, and nothing exciting generally happens on our tour for the most part. But if I sent a show report for a venue in 2016 and I know I'm going to be going back through that venue, I can search my emails of the show report, pull up what I said about that venue, and if there was an issue, I can get out in front of it and be proactive. And I know, for example, on that tour, the agent loves those updates. So it's not essential, but and you can do it in different ways. You can call the management, you can call your agent and check in with them. They're going to want to know how the shows were, how the artist is feeling, how everyone's doing on the ground, and you are that conduit for how things are going. So in whatever way you want to report it, it's important to keep people who are off-road informed of how things are going.
I have to agree. I, for years, never did that until I worked with a country artist, Chase Rice, and his day-to-day manager, Eddie Klessel, who I love to death, says, hey, when you send us your settlements at the end of, can you just do a little blurb, like what was the weather like that day? What was the audience like? I was like, why do you want that stuff? And, it clicked in me, like the next time that Chase went to that particular venue, just like you said, Doug, we had that valuable information. So it really, really does help to gauge going back, and it kind of jogs your memory of that particular show also. And I think business managers like that also, and especially agents, when you come back around, how was that production manager that you dealt with at that venue? How was the labor there? How was catering? Because, artists always want to remember that. Oh, I don't want to go back to that place because catering was terrible. So I think that was
As if you can't change it.
Yeah. I think it helps inform the discussion. It might not, you might go back through and it might be the same shitty catering next time, and you go, oh well, I guess my report fell on deaf ears. But maybe the agent takes notice of it and they work something into the deal. I don't know. It's open-ended, but it's certainly, for the 5, 10, 15 minutes it takes to write down how the show was, it's a good reference if you need it in future. And I've used it a couple of times and looked back on what I've written and gone, oh yeah, I remember that show. That team was great. Or, oh yeah, the parking was a nightmare at that venue. I'm going to get out in front of that with my bus driver this time.
Yeah.
I also put it in the notes section in Master Tour also. So when you do come back, you have that in your notes section. So that's just a little thing to try coming back around.
Do you put that into your notes or into the notes that get saved into Master Tour about the?
I put it in the notes that get saved into Master Tour, because even if I'm not there, whoever's coming behind me, it's just kind of sharing information moving forward.
No, that's great. That's great. If you guys are new to Master Tour, that's something that the database loads all that information about a venue onto the sheet for you, so you can see all of David's thorough notes that he's put in over the years.
There's a good question on the Q&A about rowdy artists. Does somebody else want to take that? Because my artists are pretty, they're pretty easygoing for the most part. Does somebody want to take that question?
Henry, I think you've had you probably had a lot of experience with that. I know for a fact.
I have had a lot of rowdy artists, and you know, how we try to stay on schedule. You know what? Like, that's two different things. I've had rowdy artists that somehow always still make it on time. Like it, but if you have an artist that's running late, then we're going back to time management, and your first line of defense is knowing what to expect with your artist. If you can tell, even if you're new with them after a couple of days, okay, he or she runs about 5-10 minutes late or 30, you know, and so we start padding it. They're really on stage at 8 o'clock. The day sheet says 8 o'clock. I'm going to tell them they're on at 7:30.
I change the clocks too. I change the clocks too.
Change the clocks. I print a different date sheet in their room.
I do different day sheets all the time, half hour difference, and they always think they're going on half hour late every night when they're actually early.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's why it's good to have a band and a separate band and a crew WhatsApp. So you send them two different schedules and they think you're turning up.
I've definitely had that where the rest of the band knew what the real time was, but the lead singer knew what time I told them, and so we go off that. And so that's an art form that you need to master of padding your times and managing that. Like if you know it's going to take them a little extra time, and then it's a long walk to the dressing room, pad that and figure it out. But you know, what was the rest of the question? Like bands that are more inclined to be partiers, not as experienced on tour, is that just something that needs to be accounted for day of, or a conversation? Okay, so I mean, that's something that we kind of touched on yesterday, that a lot of the times if you're an up and coming tour manager, you're trying to do a good job and stay on top of things, but you have an artist that is just disregarding all responsibility of being on time or obligations. There's a part of this is when you start with an artist, the first thing I'm trying to do is gain their trust, because they're gonna need to trust that, like, if what I'm telling them out there is important, and that their career depends on it. Really, like, you know, you asked me to be here, and so I want to do the best I can and teach them, even if they're a younger act and they're a little rowdy and not as experienced. Well, then I think it's my responsibility to teach them and show them what a responsible artist looks like, you know, because I'm going to teach you, or I'm going to work with you like you're already at that level. And I'm going to come at you and make the protocol for the day work for you. So that's a part of that. You have to expect the artist to work with you a little bit. And that's all just communication. I try to be very upfront with it early in the tour, that I'm here for them, you know?
Yeah.
I think something that you do need to keep in mind, if them staying on a schedule and being late is starting to affect your out, is it's going to start to get into bus drivers' hours and potential issues with getting to the next city. So going along with what Henry is saying, that is definitely a conversation to have with them, I believe, as an equal. You know, it's like, this is not just going to cost you money, it might cost you a show. It's like, you know, and even talking to them early on and be like, this is something we have to really pay attention to, and kind of school them on with like that end of the night thing, you know?
Yeah. And if it doesn't work, like you said, I just scare them with money. You know, it's going to be 10 grand if you go over a minute.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's like, oh, okay.
Moving forward in the industry also, because once you have that bad reputation, you have less shows. Less shows means less money. Less money means that's pretty much it.
That shit doesn't fly anymore, you know?
No.
Yeah. I mean, there's not, you know, your bus driver might have to, if you're late and your bus driver's already up and on the clock, you might have to just stop an hour out of town. Like, you know, you may, it really doesn't fly. You know?
It's the natural progression weeds these people out, though. You know what I mean? When you grow up, when we're all older in the second half of your career, you get to work with adults. It's amazing, because those people that are doing those kind of shenanigans aren't, I mean, in most cases, either A, they're not going to last, or B, they're going to outgrow it and realize it's stupid and detrimental. So when you're in the second half of your career, like some of us are, you get to work with adults who understand that they're doing this and this is a job too. And they, you know, it's like you said, that if the bus driver, I mean, I can't emphasize enough how gravely important it is to be a steward of the bus driver's time. Maybe you guys have gone over this before, but you know, that guy can run off the road and kill everybody, and it's happened, and people have had bus wrecks, and you can't, you know, tell that guy to be there at midnight, and then you decide to go to a party and you make him sit in the chair for 2 hours before he can leave. And
you can't throw money at it like we used to either.
You used to just throw money at these guys and just pay them way more, and they would just drive way further. They're all on a clock now. It's completely like it was in Europe for years, and now it's like that here. But short of that, not even the money component to it, the fact is that person is driving while you are laying in the bunk sleeping. And you can't, you know, you can't get in, a baby band can't get in the habit of, oh, he works for us, he just drive whenever we tell him to. That, you know, you can't mess with the bus driver like that, because that guy, that person has an insanely important job. You're trusting your life with him while you're sleeping. And if you don't believe me, ask the original bass player of Metallica. What happened to him? What happened to some other people? I know a guy whose bus went off the road outside of Montreal. I mean, this stuff happens, and you can't think it's not going to happen to me. You have to be super serious and super mindful of that person, because you can forget to collect the money, but he can run the bus off the road and kill everybody, and we don't want that.
I think it's important to stress to people not to be yes men and yes women. Don't be afraid of your artist. You know, there are so many cliches about demanding diva artists, and yes, they still exist. But in my experience, and hopefully you guys can back me up on this, 95% of people are just trying to do their job. You know, the artists realize that touring is part of their job, and they take it seriously. You might need to find different ways to communicate with them to make them see that what they're doing is going to impact their livelihood, but ultimately they're rational people who realize that this is their job. The idea of artists rolling around being high or drunk all the time and partying and having this insane touring lifestyle, yes, that exists, but it also exists in confines of professionalism, of putting the show on and realizing that they have responsibilities. And I think it's your job to be able to help show them that. But I think don't be afraid of your artist and just tell them yes, or, you know, you need to be realistic with them and help them see that they have responsibilities to keep to.
To add to that, I think the big three for me has always been transparency, respect, and trust. You know, you want your artist to trust you. And if you can't get to that point, it'll be a constant tug of war. You know, they have to know that you're there to protect their interest, and that it is a partnership, you know, that we are there in their representation to ensure that their interests are looked out for. And I think that's important to point out.
Well, you know what else? I had hired a couple band assistants for a different band years ago. And the young kid band assistant for our singer, not my current band, a different band. I told him, I said, listen, if he asks you a question and you don't know the answer, do not try to bullshit your way out of the question. Because these people, and this is inherently true of all successful people in the whole world, doesn't matter if it's a rock star or a lawyer, successful people can see through bullshit like you wouldn't believe. If you don't know the answer to the question, say, I don't know the answer to that question, but I will get you an answer and I will get back to you. They will never get mad at you for saying that. But if you go, start making up shit, they're gonna lose trust in you immediately. Then you, as you pointed out, that's one of the most important things. And then you're gonna be looking for another job.
Same thing goes with always saying yes too, because if people always say yes, and then the one time you can't say yes, or they jump on you and say, I'll look into it, I'll do the best I can, let me see what I can do. But if you just say yes, 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 and the first time you say no, you're done. They've lost respect for you.
Yeah.
And if they're not listening to you and not believing what you're saying, then you should start looking for another job.
For sure.
All right.
Great. Well, it looks like we've hit our 90-minute mark here. We've gone a little bit over, but we've enjoyed it. And I want to thank Thomas for jumping in with us and Kara today. Thank you for joining us on day of
so
show.
much.
Thank you.
Some of the templates we've shown today, we'll work on getting that into the template link on the website. And then next week we'll be diving into settlements, and we'll keep you posted on the webinar after that as we keep diving in week by week.
Guys, thank you so much. Have a good weekend.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.